Abraham Lincoln was born February 12, 1809. He was the second child of Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Lincoln. The family had high moral standards and opposed alcohol, dancing, and slavery. Thomas owned 2 farms, several town lots, livestock, and horses. He was among the richest men in the country. However, in 1816, Thomas lost all of his land in court cases because of faulty property titles. When Lincoln was 9, his mother Nancy died of milk sickness in 1818. After the death of Lincoln's mother, his older sister Sarah took charge of caring for him until their father remarried in 1819. Sarah later died in her 20s while giving birth to a stillborn son. Thomas Lincoln's new wife was Sarah Bush Johnston, the mother of 3 of her own children. Lincoln became very close to his stepmother and referred to her as Mother. In 1840, Lincoln became engaged to Mary Todd, who was from a wealthy slaveholding family in Lexington, Kentucky. They got married on November 4, 1842, in the Springfield mansion of Mary's married sister. Robert Todd Lincoln was born in 1843 and Edward Baker Lincoln in 1846. Robert was the only child to live to adulthood. Edward died on February 1, 1850, likely of tuberculosis. Willie Lincoln was born on December 21, 1850, and died on February 20, 1862. The Lincolns' 4th son, Thomas Tad Lincoln, was born on April 4, 1853, and died of heart failure at the age of 18. The death of their sons had profound effects on both parents. Abraham Lincoln suffered from melancholy, while later in life Mary struggled with the stresses of losing her husband and sons. Robert Lincoln committed her temporarily to a mental health asylum in 1875.
Lincoln enjoyed school but only had between 1 year and 18 months of schooling. As a kid, he wrote in his tablet, "Upon the subject of education, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in." Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was Abraham and his sister Sarah's first teacher. Nancy could not read, however she knew the Bible and she could recite the Bible passages and also poems she had memorized to them. Lincoln and his sister in 1815 and again in 1816 attended the ABC School, also known as the Blab School. The school was in a log cabin. The school also didn't have enough books for everyone, so the teacher, Zachariah Riley, walked around and listened while the students worked. Lincoln's interest in politics was renewed by the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854 and the Dred Scott decision in 1857. Lincoln re-entered politics and ran for the Senate in 1856, but was unsuccessful. 2 years later, he ran against Stephen A. Douglas for a Senate seat. He was also unsuccessful in this debate. But in a series of debates with Douglas, he gained a reputation as a skilled and passionate speaker.
On November 6, 1860, Lincoln was elected the 16th president. He won over Stephen Douglas, John Breckinridge, and John Bell. Lincoln also became the first Republican to win the presidency. Lincoln's election to the presidency was the final blow to the South and led directly to the breakup of the Union. By early February, 3 months after Lincoln's election and 1 month before his inauguration, 7 states had left the Union. These states included South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. On March 4, 1861, Lincoln would be inaugurated. He would deliver his first inaugural speech that would be written in a spirit of reconciliation toward the rebellious states. Lincoln would touch on several topics. First, his pledge to hold, occupy, and possess property and places belonging to the government. Second, the Union was indissoluble and thus secession was impossible. Third, a promise that while he would never be the first to attack, any use of arms against the United States would be regarded as rebellion and met with force. The resupply of Fort Sumter became the first crisis of the administration of President Abraham Lincoln. He notified the governor of South Carolina, Francis Pickens, that he was sending supply ships, which resulted in an ultimatum from the Confederate government: evacuate Fort Sumter immediately. Major Anderson refused to surrender. Beginning at 4:30 a.m. on April 12th, the Confederates bombarded the fort from artillery batteries surrounding the harbor. This marked the beginning of the Civil War. After the attack on Fort Sumter, April 12, 1861, Lincoln declared a state of insurrection and called for 75,000 volunteers to put down the rebellion. The northern states answered quickly, but the southern states refused to comply. Instead, 4 more states left the Union. They included Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee.
Among Abraham Lincoln's major accomplishments was the Emancipation Proclamation, which began the process of freedom for America's slaves. The document also allowed black soldiers to fight for the Union. Legislation Abraham Lincoln signed into law included the Homestead Act, the Morrill Act, the National Banking Act, and a bill that chartered the first transcontinental railroad. Abraham Lincoln gave a series of great speeches before and during his presidency, including the House Divided Speech, the Cooper Union, the first inaugural address, the Gettysburg Address, and the second inaugural address. On April 14, 1865, actor John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., and fatally shot President Abraham Lincoln. As Lincoln slumped forward in his seat, Booth leapt onto the stage and escaped through the back door. Lincoln was then carried across the street to the Peterson's boarding house, where he died early the next morning. Lincoln was the first president assassinated in U.S. history. Booth did not act alone, and the conspirators were all captured. Booth was shot while trying to escape from Union soldiers.